They say a city has 10 million stories, but are they worth the paper they're printed on? I'm J.B. Helm, and I have a story to tell you. Pull up a chair. Hi, this is J.B. Helm. Did you ever watch a movie and all of a sudden it ends and you're sitting there scratching your head wondering what happened? This happened the other night we were watching a movie. Now, years ago I wrote a novel, and I always wanted to write a novel because I was a nonfiction writer, my whole life. Published tons of articles, right? Over 1,000 articles and columns and books that I wrote and published, all about particular niche nonfiction books. And I was an avid reader, read a lot of course, all the classics, and plus a lot of contemporary fiction. And I wanted to write a novel. I wrote a novel, came out with it, and pulled it after about a month because I didn't have a good plot. I didn't promote the book at all. It was a spy thriller. And that's been bothering me ever since. So, I was thinking, I had these characters in my head, had these stories in my head, and I said, at this time I'm going to do it right. I'm going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I'm going to have a real, actual plot with a good outline. And, you have to have an end, and it has to be a good end. And if you don't have an end, you don't know where you're going. So that you just kind of meandering, you ended up with a convoluted story. And I've noticed, too, that when you get a really bad ending in a story, it's usually in a movie, not in a book. Probably the publishers, will not publish a book if it just ends abruptly and, doesn't solve anything. But movies, though, they get away with it. Now here's my new book. This is The Valentine Protocol. It's a Frankie Valentine thriller. It's the first of a series. And it's about 160 pages long. I'm going to write short fiction. It's basically like a novella. One of the things I did to improve, just my whole process is I said, instead of writing a novel, I'm going to write a story. And I'm not going to, this way I don't fall into that trap I did the first time where I didn't have a satisfactory ending. Because this time I said, I'm going to tell a story. And it's going to have a beginning and a middle and an end, just like books that people like to read. But, in movies sometimes, maybe it's because, the director is famous or something. A lot of times they have these really terrible endings. So we watched a movie the other day. It's an old movie from 2001, and I'm going to tell you the ending. So if you want to, if you've never seen the film and you want to see it, I'll let you know when I'm going to have a spoiler. But we put this film on, and I had seen it years ago, but I couldn't remember it. I mean, you're talking 25 years ago. It was directed by Sean Penn, and it had one of the best cast I've ever seen in a film. I mean, this is literally one of the greatest casts I've ever seen. Look at Jack Nicholson was the protagonist. He was the main star of the film. Robin Wright, who was married to Sean Penn at the time, was in it. Aaron Eckhart, Patricia Clarkson, Benicio del Toro, Helen Mirren. Now, good character actors too. Tom Noonan, Michael O'Keefe. Vanessa Redgrave was in it. Sham Shepard, Mickey Rourke, Lois Smith, Harry Dean Stanton. Really an extraordinary cast. And some of these performances, like Vanessa Redgrave, was just brilliant in this film. And she only had one part, small part, but and same thing with Benicio del Toro. He had a small part, but he was outstanding. So the film is a mystery where Jack Nicholson plays a detective who's retiring, but a child gets murdered, and he tells the parents that he promises that he'll catch whoever did this. So that's why it's called The Pledge. So it's a slow-moving film. And you're watching the film, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, Sean Penn seems like a pretty good director. It's framed nice. He had some of the places he picked to film looked really cool. Like there's this gas station that Jack Nicholson his character ends up living, purchasing, which is I don't know where he found this place. It was but the whole thing looked really cool. So even though it was slow moving, it was going along, and you had such a good cast that it was decent. But then it gets to the end, and here's the spoiler. It gets to the end, and he has a trap set. Now this is a smart detective. Even though he's retired, he planned this whole thing out to try to get this killer. sets a trap for him, and on the way there, the killer gets into a car accident and dies. And there's a fire and his body gets burnt to a crisp, but you can't identify him. And then, as if that's not bad enough, the character that Jack Nicholson's playing, the detective, goes crazy. And in the end of the film, he's just sitting there in hell, and he's like babbling or something. I mean, it's unbelievable because here's this fantastic cast, talented guy directing it. I mean, Sean Penn is a very talented, guy, terrific actor, obviously, and he's directed 7 films. 6 of them have lost money, so he's really not known for his directing. But he has the ability to be a good director. There's no question about it. I mean, you watch this film and all along it looks fine until he decided to do something, I guess, that he thought was creative for the end. But I mean, think about this. Now, this is a mystery. It plays just like you're watching an Agatha Christie mystery or something like that. It's just a mystery. It's a murder mystery. Can you imagine if you're reading a book? Say you're reading Agatha Christie, and you get to the end, and Poirot is about to solve the crime, but the killer gets killed in the car accident, and the book just ends. And so you never find out who did it. They just tell you, oh, the whoever did it, we don't, just got killed. So, I mean, you would be furious. You'd be like, I just spent a week reading this book, and now I don't find out who did it. That's the whole idea of a mystery, right? It's a whodunit. You're trying to guess who did it, and then you're trying to figure out, you're watching the detective solve the mystery. And I really thought this was going to be this suspenseful ending, and he's going to you're going to walk out of the theater feeling like, wow, the protagonist saved the day. Well, of course he couldn't save the day because the murderer was already committed, but solved the crime, in which case he would have satisfied the pledge he made to the parents. So that's the thing, when you're telling a story, if you're going to say, if you think that you could be different and break the mold, and don't end the story, just leave it flat, or kill off the good guy, or not solve the mystery, it's not going to work. Now, why did they get all these good actors and all this to do this film, even though it had this terrible ending? Well, because it was Sean Penn. I mean, it was only his 3rd film. They probably figured, oh, Sean Penn, he's brilliant. So all these people wanted to be in his film, and he decided to do something that was, not traditional. Now, some people like the film. Now, I looked at the reviews on Amazon, and the 1-star reviews, were the same type of reviews I would have given, like terrible ending. The film lost money. It didn't do well at all in the box office. Some of the critics, and quite a few of the critics gave it good reviews. What are they going to, it's Sean Penn. I mean, you can't go by these critics. I mean, they're a bunch of phonies, a lot of them. And you have all these great actors in it. So naturally, as you're watching it, you're like, oh, this is good. But you can't ruin a story with a bad ending. Alfred Hitchcock used to talk about this. He would say, I want to scare them. I want to give them thrills. I want to keep them on the edge of their seat. But then I want to have a happy ending so that they can go home and say that they enjoyed the film and they feel good about it. People don't want to see the bad guys win. I mean, that's why when you read a thriller, you want the bad guys to get caught. But it's just one of those odd things, and very, very talented people. And I made that mistake in my first book where it wasn't, the ending was also, it wasn't as bad as this, but still it was a flat ending. And like I said, I pulled the book, I put it out, I took it off after a month. So now I'm making that mistake. So I'm working on my second Frankie Valentine. I'm in the 3rd chapter now, and I'm also writing another thriller, a post-World War II thriller with a different character, where I take some of the things that from my own life, some of the experiences from my own life, and my father's experiences when he came back from World War II. And he went into the bar business in Manhattan, and he met some, shady characters, like mob characters. And there's Pinkertons that come into play. So that book I'm working on, and that'll be coming out this year too. So I'll actually, have two more. In a few months, I'll have three thrillers out there. But anyway, thanks for listening. Get, I'd like to, any advice or any comments you have. Have you seen any films like that had really bad stories? And it doesn't happen in books. It seems like it's only movies because I don't think they publish the book. If you hand a book into a publisher and it doesn't have and it has this kind of ending where Perot screws it up at the end, they're going to say no, you got to fix that. You know. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to my channel. I'd appreciate it. This is JB Helm, and let's have as many stories as we can.